We're here to reflect, and we're also here to plan for any changes we need to make in our lives, and we're going to do that this morning. And while we're out of a series, I thought it might be wise to just kind of step back together and look at the Bible and ask the areas that we can improve together. So we're going to read here in a second, but before we read, maybe you've already read ahead. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to spoil what we're about to read. I want to tell you a little bit of why we picked this passage for this morning. I picked Psalm 90 because you'll find that it is excellent at giving us one very specific thing, and that is the big bad word, perspective. Psalm 90 is amazing at giving us perspective. If you walk away with something today at church, after church, you remember that. Psalm 90 is giving us great perspective. I spent 3.5 years studying philosophy in college. I minored in philosophy, and it was a lot of fun. And one of the things that I kind of extracted from that part of my education is the importance of the idea of perspective. I believe that perspective in some ways is the linchpin of some of the most critical aspects of our faith. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Because it's your perspective on God that determines whether you have a big faith, because you believe in a big God, or a small faith, because you don't believe in a big God at all. It's our perspective on the human condition that determines whether we can have the kind of empathy that Jesus had. And it's our perspective on the passage of time that determines our haste to carry out God's will in this earth before it's too late. So I'm going to open up with a perspective kind of question that you don't need to answer. And the question is, how much time do we have? The answer to that question is not a lot. We don't have very much time at all. In fact, I think it would be fair to say that there's no time to waste. No time to waste. So as we prepare for 2025 to become 2026, as we prepare to write 2025 accidentally over and over again for the first few months, I want to bring to the table a reminder for us all that we are short on time. And that's a reminder that comes straight from Psalm 90. So open it up and we will read it together as a church. Verse 1. Lord, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains were born, before you gave birth to the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. You return mankind to the dust, saying, "Return, descendants of Adam. For in your sight 1,000 years are like yesterday that passes by, like a few hours of the night. You end their lives, they sleep. They are like grass that grows in the morning. In the morning it sprouts and grows, by evening it withers and dries up. For we are consumed by your anger. We are terrified by your wrath. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days ebb away under your wrath. We end our years like a sigh. Our lives last 70 years, or if we are strong, 80 years. Even the best of them are struggle and sorrow. Indeed, they pass quickly, and we fly away. Who understands the power of your anger? Your wrath matches the fear that is due you. Teach us to number our days carefully so that we may develop wisdom in our hearts. Lord, how long? Turn and have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your faithful love so that we may shout with joy and be glad all our days. Make us rejoice for as many days as you have humbled us, for as many years as we have seen adversity. Let your work be seen by your servants and your splendor by their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be on us. Establish the work of our hands. Establish the work of our hands. Isn't that beautiful? What I want to do is look again together, taking it piece by piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to circle back to the first couple of verses, and I'll tell you what they're all about. Really, in big, bold letters, the first couple of verses of this chapter says, God is sovereign. He is supreme and over all things. Now, why is that important to us? I want to start off our study with that reminder because the God that we worship, when we sing songs like we did this morning, is not one with limits. He's not. And that doesn't really sound like a very groundbreaking, earth-shattering kind of point to be made in church on a Sunday. But how often do we live as if God has limits? How often do we act like he has limits? How often do we pray like God has limits? There are things that he cannot do. How often do we worry like God has limits? Because right away, we kind of look at verse 2, and our minds are already stretched past the limit of what we can even conceive of. We're going back to eternity past. Before the mountains were born, before the earth and the world even existed, God was already there. He didn't come from anywhere. He didn't begin. He didn't grow into power. He's the uncreated creator. God has always been and will always be God, eternity past and eternity future. He simply is. Already that's stretching the limits of my imagination and understanding. And it's that concept of God's eternality that makes verse 1, what happens in verse 1, possible. Lord, you have been our refuge in every generation. Now, God can be a refuge in every generation because he is outside of time, right? He stands over every generation. He outlasts them. He carries them. But this is the important point. God is not just the refuge for one moment in history. He's the refuge across history. And that's exactly what, there's a hymn that I'll read for you by Isaac Watts that I think really fits well with this. It's kind of a copy and paste from verses 1 and 2. You can look at those verses as I say this. Our God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. The God who existed before the world was even spoken into existence is the same God who has carried his people through every single age, and he's not done. God is not finished with his work. He's our help behind us, but he's also our hope ahead of us and our shelter from the storm. Romans 11:36 says this, from him and through him and to him are all things. Now, we've spent some time talking about that because I think that there's a truth that we need to face, that I need to personally face. Because my default setting isn't really to live as if God is at the center of everything. What is my default setting? What is your default setting? It's to live as if who's at the center of everything? We are. You know what I mean? You ever been like late for work and you get in your car and you're like, I am so late. This is a problem. You get on the freeway, you get on the highway, and someone has the audacity to drive the speed limit. How could they? Do they not know that I am late? You're gonna obey the law right now? Why does that frustrate us? Because I think that we struggle with the idea that other people are not focusing on us at all. We struggle with the idea that we are not at the center of the world. Our timeline, our agenda, our priorities should be the most important thing. I love the theme that we did last year. It's not about me. But Psalm 90 kind of tests that idea in us and pushes it further, because here's the problem. We can say it's not about me while simultaneously hoarding wealth and comfort. We can say it's not about me while buying into the myth of self-importance. And we can pray to the God who is eternal through and simultaneously pretend that we have the hints about all these objective truths. We know all these things that the Bible doesn't even talk about. It doesn't work that way. We walk around like we have the power to condemn people, but what does the Bible say? God, you return mankind to the dust. saying, "Return, descendants of Adam, for in your sight 1,000 years are like yesterday that passes by, like a few hours of the night. You end their lives, they sleep. They are like grass that grows in the morning. In the morning it sprouts and grows. By evening it withers and dries up." That's what I'm talking about when I mention perspective. There's a saying derived from Plato's account of the Greek philosopher Socrates that you may have heard before. "I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing." And that's basically the posture that Psalm 90 is trying to give us, trying to get us to lean into. God is God, and we are not. These verses remind us that compared to the one who is eternal, we are honestly small. Some of you in this room are taller than me, but you are still small when compared to an eternal God, right? I'm not saying that we're worthless. I'm not saying that we're unloved, but we are small. Listen to that language again. In your sight, 1,000 years, 1,000 years are like yesterday that passes by, like a few hours of the night. In other words, what feels massive to us, decades, generations, and empires, they pass by in a minute for God. And James says the same thing in this line in James chapter 4. "Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like" what? "Vapor that appears for a little while, then vanishes." Now, I believe that if life is that fleeting, then it matters how we live it before a holy God. And that's exactly where we go next with verses 7 through 11. "For we are consumed by your anger. We are terrified by your wrath. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days ebb away under your wrath. We end our years like a sigh. Our lives last 70 years, or if we are strong, 80 years. Even the best of them are struggle and sorrow. Indeed, they pass quickly and we fly away. Who understands the power of your anger? Your wrath matches the fear that is due you." The funny thing is, though our lifetimes are so small when compared to God, that does not mean that he doesn't react when we disobey him. Because God isn't distant like that. He isn't uncaring like that. The people praying this prayer were looking back at their own story and basically saying, "Hey, we've seen how our unfaithfulness has put us into this situation. Can we do the same?" And then verse 10 does that thing and reminds us back of the thing that we've kind of been talking about all day long, the brevity of life. 70, 80 years of life on this earth. Maybe 90, maybe 100, but that's kind of it. And they pass quickly. Now, I'm not bringing up that point. I'm not reading this passage in Psalm 90 that talks about how your life is so short because I'm trying to bum you out before the new year. I'm not doing that. I promise you. And Psalm 90 isn't doing it either. It's actually trying to encourage us to consider and feel how short life is, because it's only when we feel the shortness of life that we are put in the correct posture toward God. A posture of dependency. And an understanding about what is really worth it, what is really urgent, what matters. In fact, in verse 11 sort of ends this section with that question. Who understands the power of your anger? Your wrath matches the fear that is due you. It's like the psalmist is saying, if this is who God is, holy, not fooled by our secret sins, then what is the right response? How do we respond to that God? And that question becomes a hinge for the rest of the psalm. Because from verse 12 to the end, we kind of have a different tone. It's more about reflection. And it has all these requests. You'll see if you look at verses 12 through 17, it has all these requests of God. Teach us, satisfy us, and have compassion on us. And that's not a person praying and demanding these rights that they have from God, things that God owes them. It's the prayer of somebody who needs mercy. Now, why am I explaining this? It's because when we get to this first request, it's going to shape the rest of the passage that we're about to read. Look at verse 12. A very, very simple but massive question is asked, a massive request. Teach us to number our days carefully so that we may develop wisdom in our hearts. Now, I like the bravery of making this kind of request. Not just the bravery of making a request of God, but the bravery of asking that God teach us how to number the rest of our days. Now, it's worth considering what this question isn't asking for. If you consider the I don't know, it's a hypothetical, I suppose, of a genie in a bottle, right? You find a lamp or whatever, and a genie pops out of it. You get 3 wishes. Obviously, we all know your first wish is supposed to be for infinite more wishes. We know that. But maybe one of your wishes that you use after that might be for a longer life. You want more days on this earth. The request that we're seeing here in verse 12 isn't asking for more days. It's not a request for a longer life filled with excess. It's asking that God give us perspective. The perspective that we've been talking about. It's praying that God would teach us an awareness of our limits so that we can gain a heart of wisdom. And honestly, this is where it gets a little uncomfortable, but definitely practical. Because when you think about how short 70 years is, 80 years, 90 years, you start to realize that some things aren't quite as important as you make them. Right? You look back at your life in retrospect at the end. Are you going to wish that you spent more time on certain things? I had done the math. I chose to remove it because I wasn't confident in my own math. But I had done the math that I was going to share with you, which I'll just kind of botch and share anyway, that our lives are, if they're 90 years, about a third of that is sleep. About 10 years is for work. About a year just for commuting. About 4 to 5 years for watching TV. Our lives are not quite as long as we think they are. And if you knew exactly how much time you had left, do you think it would change your priorities? Do you think you'd spend your time on more important things? The fact of the matter is that the Bible does not promise tomorrow to us. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that you're going to wake up tomorrow morning, that I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that I'm going to make it home after I'm done preaching. It doesn't say that. And that's why Scripture talks the way it does about wisdom. Because a wise person doesn't live in denial of time. They don't assume that they've got later to do something, to act, to change. They live with the right perspective, basically saying, hey, look, I don't know how much time I have left, so the things that I am going to think about, the things that I'm going to focus on are going to be things that last for longer than my life. Eternal things. That's what James was getting at when he said we're like vapor. Our lives are just here 1 minute and then gone the next. And Jesus says the same thing in a different way in Matthew 24. This is why you are also to be ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. This isn't about scaring us or making us uncomfortable. I do hope it makes you a little uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable. It's not about putting us into a panic, but waking us up. I'll give you another driving illustration. You know, when you're driving and you, let's say you're not using Google Maps for a second. You know, you're driving, which I do all the time. You know, you're driving and you're on the freeway and you see those little signs on the side and it says like next exit 2 miles. No, I already did that. I already talked about that. I was going to talk about, no, that's it. I did that in the first service. I was like, I just repeated an illustration. No, I did that in the first service. I like this illustration. We're sticking with it. You know, when you're driving on the road, you see that next exit 2 miles sign. You have kind of a choice of what you're going to do. Every person in this room is a particular kind of driver. You see that your exit is in 2 miles. what do? Do you stay in the left lane? I'm looking at some of you. Some of you are staying in that left lane. You're chilling. You're waiting until there's 10 seconds left. Then you skirt across 4 lanes of traffic. Holy moly, you terrify me. Or, what's the other thing that you could do? You can adjust now. You can change lanes. You can pay attention. Because numbering our days is kind of like that sign. It's God telling us that we shouldn't be drifting through life like it's endless. You got to pay attention. You got to choose what matters. Because once you realize how little time is left, the question isn't how do I squeeze more into this life that I have? The question is, what is the quality of life that I have? What am I spending my time on right here, right now, today? What are my plans for this evening? Is it worth it if I don't wake up tomorrow morning? And that's what Psalm 90 is pushing us toward, not more consumption and activity, but more wisdom. In which case you might ask the question, what is that wisdom? Wisdom here is skill in the art of godly living. If wisdom is godly living, then Psalm 90 shows us what wise people pray for. Take a look, 13 through 17. Lord, how long? Big question. Lord, how long? Turn and have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your faithful love, so that we may shout with joy and be glad all our days. Make us rejoice for as many days as you have humbled us, for as many years as we have seen adversity. Let your work be seen by your servants and your splendor by their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be on us. Establish for us the work of your hands. Establish the work of your hands. And you can kind of notice maybe a little bit of what all those requests have in common, because they're not really asking for more of life. They're not asking for more time, for more free time, for more possessions or comforts. Instead, these requests, the requests of a wise person, are for more of God. We sang that song, but I hope it impacted you. More of you, Lord. More of you. You see, wisdom asks for mercy and compassion without entitlement. Wisdom asks for satisfaction from God regardless of circumstance. Wisdom asks for joy that matches the pain and adversity in life. Wisdom asks for God's favor and lasting impact. We can stay busy our whole lives, and at the end of it, I promise you, you will have a very sore body and you'll have an empty soul, right? It's kind of like running the race that Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians, but instead of running it like on a track that I'm sure that Paul was envisioning, you're running it on a treadmill. Nothing wrong with running on a treadmill. It works you out nice and good, but do you get anywhere? Do you move forward in the real world? This prayer asks God to empower us as we step off the treadmill, asking God to establish what we do, to make it real, to make it eternal. And that kind of brings us back to the hinge of this Psalm, verse 12. Because here's the thing about wisdom. Wisdom is not knowing information, right? A wise person is not a person necessarily who is really good at the crossword puzzle. Not necessarily. They know a lot of facts that I don't know, which is why I can't do crossword puzzles. But that does not make them wise. No, wisdom is, catch this, living like our days are numbered and choosing what lasts. Not just living as if, tomorrow is the last day on earth, so I'm just going to go crazy. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to have fun because my life may not be that long. We're not talking about YOLO today. We're talking about something else. A wise person is a person who lives like their days are numbered and choosing what lasts. Now, the problem is that ultimately we don't usually, personally, I don't, we don't usually default to being wise people. We default to being distracted people. We default to being comfortable people. We default to being busy. It's the weirdest thing. I remember when I was a kid, I couldn't believe that people would work outside of when they actually had to work. And then I got older and I realized, oh my goodness, I have a problem with being busy. And the world is cool with that. The world will very happily and effectively keep you occupied for the rest of your natural-born life, keeping you from being the kind of person that God created you to be. I looked it up yesterday, and it's estimated that 82 years worth of videos are uploaded to YouTube every single day. If I was going to try to watch all of the videos that just came out yesterday, it would take the rest of my life. And we're not talking about Netflix and Paramount Plus and HBO Max and Disney Plus and whatever else, right? There's so much content for us to consume. There's so much for us as humans to just get enamored with in this world. And we can spend our life doing it. Jesus put it this way: for what will it benefit someone if he gains the whole world yet loses his life? Consuming, gaining, achieving, and still losing what matters most. Paul told us that when we're running that race, we're supposed to be running to win. Not running in circles, not shadow boxing, not spending our lives on things that don't last. And the hard truth that we've already kind of seen, but I'm going to say it explicitly from Psalm 90, is right in front of us, and that is, we don't get unlimited days. No one in this room does. Going back to James, who said, you don't know what tomorrow will bring, there's a question that I have to ask myself, and I'm gonna ask you as well. Can you afford to wait until later to get serious in life? What are you doing with the time that you have now? We're only a few days away from 2026. Oh boy, you seem so excited. I'm very excited. It's almost here. And I know some people in the room, you don't have to raise your hands, but I know some people like to do New Year's resolutions, right? Where it's like, okay, this year I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start on January 1st, and I'm probably going to quit in 2 weeks. No, we don't say that. We don't say that, but it does maybe end up being that way. Now, I have nothing wrong with the idea I have no issue with the idea of doing a New Year's resolution, but it's always funny because mentally I'll think to myself in the weeks coming up to the new year, I'll think to myself, okay, you want to make an improvement to your life. My question is, why wait? Could you not start today? I would guess that there's maybe one person in this room, at least one person, whose New Year's resolution is eat better. Anybody? You could just nod your head very subtly. I want to eat better. Yeah. You're probably going to have lunch after this, right? Now, you could choose to go to Smashburger, or you could choose to eat better now. That's a fun question. But do you have someone in your life that you need to reconcile with? Do you have a secret sin that you're managing? Are you on the fence about the decision to follow Jesus Christ with your life? My question is the same. Can you afford to wait? Can you afford to when tomorrow is not promised to you? The most helpful part of this psalm to me is that God doesn't just expose how short life is. He invites us to bring that life to Him. With whatever amount of time we have left, the Bible asks that we dedicate that time to God. And that's the path off the treadmill, right? Just adding more of God into the rest of our lives. If you want to bring this concept into the new year, if you want to be a wise person who remembers the brevity of life, then you could probably memorize Psalm 90. That might take a little bit, so I'll give you something in the meantime if you want to memorize this prayer. You can even say it in your heart right now with me. Lord, I don't have much time left. Guide me to find my satisfaction in you above all. Teach me wisdom. Lead me by your Spirit. Keep me from sin and empty distractions. Use my life for what lasts. There's a line from a poem written by a British missionary that really captures the core of what we've been talking about here in Psalm 90. He says this in this poem: "Only one life, yes, only one. Now let me say thy will be done. And when at last I'll hear the call, I know I'll say 'twas worth it all. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last." That's what this prayer is after. That's what Psalm 90 is after. A life that isn't just spent, certainly not a life that's wasted, but a life that's invested. So that when all is said and done, we can say it was worth it. So here's the invitation, and it's really simple. Stop assuming that you'll have someday to get around to living wisely, to living faithfully. Stop living like the urgent is more important than the eternal, and today ask God for what this psalm teaches us to ask for wisdom. Because the amazing critical news is this: the God who is eternal is not distant. He's a dwelling place. He's a refuge. The God who knows our days are few is the God who can fill those days with meaning, joy, and lasting fruit. So I'd invite you to come to him. I promise it's not a decision you will ever regret. And we're going to pray in a moment. I want to invite our prayer partners to come up. We're going to give you this time, just a short time. We do this every service, but we do it because it's important. If there's a person in this room right now who is thinking about how little time is left and needs to make a decision, now would be the time to do it when we sing here in a moment. Come forward because you've chosen to follow Jesus with your life. You can come forward because you've chosen to be baptized soon. We had a baptism at the first service, and it was awesome. It's one of the most exciting things that we do as a church. I love it. And that can be you. People at the front here are ready and willing to answer any questions you may have about any of those decisions, or just about the church in general. Maybe you have a question about membership, I don't know. Or maybe you made a big decision today. You can come forward just as we sing and pray.